Hi, Jeff Brown here. I wanted to take a few moments to talk about something that's really getting all the headlines. And really, what are the underlying drivers behind it? That's the biggest mergers and acquisition deal in history, which is the SpaceX acquisition of X.AI. Now, obviously, these are two of Elon Musk's companies, SpaceX, which is short for space exploration, and X.AI, which is Musk's artificial intelligence company. You know, on the surface, this acquisition doesn't make any sense. One is about rocket technology and launching payloads into low Earth orbit and potentially exploring the moon and Mars. And the other one is an artificial company that's really focused on building the world's first artificial general intelligence. They seem like disparate companies, but there's obviously a very strong connection between these two initiatives. And ironically, it's primarily being driven by the needs of energy, specifically energy to power artificial intelligence data centers. So obviously X.AI has been building out some of the largest AI infrastructure, these massive hyperscale data centers on Earth in South Memphis. I've been there myself to see the scale and size of what X.AI has undertaken. It's absolutely extraordinary. The biggest problem that's being faced by the industry right now is the lack of energy. We cannot bring on new energy production fast enough to meet the demands of all these artificial intelligence hyperscale data centers, these AI factories. Well, it's kind of natural when we think about it from this perspective. There is essentially an unlimited amount of free energy available to us, but it's not on the Earth right now. It's actually in space. And one of the hottest topics right now in high tech is this concept of orbital AI data centers, which is, very difficult to wrap our heads around. We can't launch a football field sized or a factory hyperscale data center into orbit. It seems counterintuitive. It actually seems impossible to put something like that in space, but that's the wrong way to think about it. We can launch AI satellites, so large, very large satellites that are essentially racks upon racks of graphics processing units, GPUs and CPUs, essentially, AI servers that are contained within a satellite, and launch numbers of these. They each weigh somewhere between 1 ton to 2 tons. And we launch them into what's referred to as a sun-synchronous orbit, which allows these satellites to basically generate energy from the sun, directly from the sun, free energy, I might add, 24 hours a day. SpaceX announced, in conjunction with X.AI, the intention to build a 1 million satellite, AI satellite constellation in Earth's orbit, the sun-synchronous orbit again, and has actually already received approval from the FCC to do precisely that. And if there's one company or one person, Elon Musk and his teams at SpaceX, if there's one company that could do it, it's definitely SpaceX. So what's the advantage of doing this? Imagine, 1 million satellites in orbit, each 1 or 2 tons, gigawatt scale energy production through solar panels in orbit, fueling the development of artificial intelligence and also the running of artificial intelligence applications. There's 2 reasons. One, being in orbit, again, is free energy. So your cost for electricity are zero. And also your cost for cooling is zero. They simply, put radiators on to radiate the heat that's produced from these AI satellites directly into space, near absolute zero temperatures. It's extremely efficient. You don't have to, launch into orbit any of the expensive, bulky kind of cooling infrastructure that's required on Earth and terrestrial data centers. You also don't need water. And water, these artificial intelligence data centers on Earth really require massive amounts of water to help take the heat away from these AI servers. and cool down the systems. None of that is required in space. And so the cost of ongoing operations for this 1 million satellite constellation of AI data centers, AI satellites, is essentially zero. These AI satellites will be built with a lot of redundancy in terms of the chips. So even if one or a few of these chips fail, there'll be fallovers. They'll fall back into chips that are still functioning, not have a problem. And the average lifespan will be 4 or 5 years for these AI satellites. And they'll eventually be deorbited and actually into a heliocentric orbit, which means rather than disposing of them in the ocean on Earth, they'll actually send them off into an orbit around the sun, and they'll eventually burn up in the sun, which is a very clever and smart way to dispose of the satellites when you're done with them. But all of this is possible. People say this is still not economically possible. In fact, OpenAI's CEO Sam Altman, an adversary of Musk, is currently wrapped up in a massive lawsuit with Musk right now over what Altman has done with OpenAI, trying to change it from a nonprofit to a for-profit entity. He said he's been very critical of these orbital data centers, but that actually doesn't make any sense because with SpaceX's Starship, and actually the version 3 of SpaceX Starship will be launching next month. So in March, the cost to launch payload into orbit is going to dramatically fall by more than 90%, I should say. So the cost per kilogram to get something into Earth's orbit will fall to around $200 by no later than next year, 2027, and by 2028, my predictions are we'll see sub $100 per kilogram launch costs. Why? Because SpaceX produces the most efficient rocket engines, and all of their rockets are designed with reusability in mind. The Gigabay, which is SpaceX's manufacturing plant for making the Starship, will be scaled to the point where it will produce as much as 1,000 Starships a year. And SpaceX plans to eventually get to the stage where it will be able to launch multiple Starships every single day. And so when we consider the manufacturing capacity, the infrastructure that SpaceX already has, SpaceX's impeccable record for launching rockets into orbit and reusability, and its success rate, which is near perfect, it's not a stretch to imagine that this becomes very economically feasible. In fact, within 36 months, Musk is actually predicting within 30 months, it will be cheaper to have AI satellites in space than it will be to build terrestrial data centers. So that's how quickly these developments are happening. And if we think about this in the context of orbital AI satellites and this 1 million satellite constellation, suddenly this combination between SpaceX and X.AI, it actually makes a whole lot of sense. And the even bigger picture, if we step back about this SpaceX X.AI combination, is that Musk is building what I refer to as a literal World Wide Web. This is a space-based version of the World Wide Web, literally wrapping around Earth as internet infrastructure in space. So if we combine the Starlink network, which has about 10,000 satellites today, these satellites are able to communicate with each other with optical interconnects, optical links. And then we add in a 1 million satellite constellation for AI satellites. We literally now have created the internet infrastructure around Earth, entirely in space. And so SpaceX, with obviously the combination of X.AI, is building something really extraordinary that will be a benefit, obviously, not only to SpaceX, but also to consumers, to industry, and of course, the U.S. government as well, because it will be able to leverage this space-based infrastructure. Now, this isn't a replacement for terrestrial data centers. That won't change. But it is a bridge. It'll help solve the energy problem. And over the course of the next few years, obviously, there's going to be the fourth generation, the next generation of nuclear fission power plants, which are literally currently being constructed right now. And we'll also see some amazing developments with nuclear fusion, another form of very clean energy that will be able to provide the kind of baseload power that AI data centers require 24/7. And all of these developments obviously reduce the need for us to lean heavily on fossil fuels. And over time, eventually, we'll no longer need to rely on coal and natural gas. And so the real motivations here are to combine these two companies and plan for this IPO, which the word on the street is we're expecting it to happen in June for this combined company of SpaceX and X.AI. And these orbital AI satellites, this 1 million Constellation is really one of the key drivers for SpaceX over the next several years. And, we can be absolutely confident that Elon Musk and his team at Space Exploration will be able to deploy it with the same level of efficacy and productivity that they've been able to deploy the 10,000 satellite Starlink network, which now has more than 8 million subscribers around the world. This is one of the most extraordinary developments in the history of technology. It's extremely exciting, and it's happening at the same time that artificial intelligence, artificial general intelligence, is being developed by X.AI. We are weeks away from that breakthrough. It's happening right now. I couldn't be more excited about these developments, and we really do have so much to look forward to.